Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Ladies and gentlemen, chartered accountants, I am really very grateful for this honor which you have given me. But you have also given me a big challenge, because making people listen to you, especially when they are coming straight from lunch tables, is also quite a daunting task. So before I start my talk, let me do a kind of a wake-up exercise or a little interactive session with you. You are all chartered accountants. So let me test your knowledge that in a balance sheet, which is the most important component? You all do balance sheets day and night, 24/7. So which is the most important element of the balance sheets or any financial statement? Liabilities. Net worth. Intangibles. Capital. All of it. G. Well, if you ask me, I'll say it is the footnotes. Agree? The balance sheet is actually constructed on assumptions. And that is why when a lady who was diagnosed with a terminal illness and doctor told her that she only has 6 months to live, so she went to a friend and said that, well, I have only 6 months to live. What shall I do? So her friend said, marry an accountant. She said, what do you mean? Will marrying an accountant make me live longer? She said, no. But certainly accountant will make it look longer for you. So therefore, the test of the balance sheet lies in the footnotes. What are the assumptions on which you construct your assets? What are the assumptions on which you construct your liabilities? I think that's, to me, the most important element. And that is where the issue of standards, issue of codes, code of ethics, issue of regulation comes in, that how can you make your assumptions? Otherwise, I think as far as numbers are concerned, you can turn any profit-making operation into a loss-making operation, or loss-making operation into a profit-making organization. So having said this, let me congratulate Mr. Ishfaq Tola and all the chartered accountants present in today's conference and associated with ICAP since its inception, for ensuring the chartered accountants as a community, for contributing towards building financial sector of Pakistan in an inclusive manner, and for working as a strategic think tank for business as well as government on financial matters. The theme of the conference, sustainability, technology and transformation, is very apt, and according to what Pakistan needs at this moment. Pakistan has had episodes of high growth which could not be sustained beyond 4 to 5 years, mainly because growth is sustained on innovation and transformative approach, whereas Pakistan has unfortunately not invested enough on technology and transformation to sustain its growth. An American economist gave the concept of production possibility curve, a concept explaining the maximum amount of goods and services a country can produce in a given amount of resources and technology. Moreover, he recognized that resources in any given economy are limited. Thus, it is only the technology and innovation that can help a country push its production possibility curve outwards meaning that it can produce more goods and services with the resources and technology it has by investing in innovation, improving its business models. I'm explaining this to you to make an argument that often critique on Pakistan centered around populist narrative of corruption and accountability. And we are made to believe that Pakistan could not progress and develop because Pakistan was a very corrupt country and there was not enough accountability in Pakistan. And my thesis is that as far as corruption and accountability are concerned, Pakistan is much better than many of those countries which have overtaken us. So if Pakistan was lacking in this area, then why is it that Bangladesh, which always ranked much ahead of Pakistan on international transparency corruption index, has overtaken us? After 50 years today, Bangladesh is claiming that we have beaten Pakistan in every social and economic indicator. Now, if that were the case, that Pakistan was not moving because we were very corrupt or there was not enough accountability in Pakistan, then why is it that Bangladesh and India, both which have no less corruption and more accountability than us, have moved far ahead? Ladies and gentlemen, I think if we do not diagnose a problem correctly, we cannot solve the problem correctly. As chartered accountants, if you are unable to diagnose that what is causing the problem in the financial statement, you will never be able to fix that problem. It is 75 years anniversary in 2022. We have lived for 75 years as a country, and we are still unable to decide what is our way forward. In 75th year of our creation, still we are discussing, should we have a presidential system, or should we have a parliamentary system, or should we have a martial law, or should we have a hybrid system? Now, you are all corporate sector people. Tell me that a company that does not have a stable business model, can it ever perform, or can it ever succeed? Pakistan's fundamental problem in these 75 years has been that we have been unable to produce political stability and continuity of economic policies. We have not been bad at making policies. Actually, as a matter of fact, we were the leaders in South Asia in making some of the policies. In 1990-91, when Nawaz Sharif government introduced liberalization, deregularization, and privatization, Pakistan was leading the path in South Asia. But what happened? We discontinued that path and we lost 90s decade to political instability for throwing governments out every 2 years. On the other hand, India picked up those reforms, and Mr. Sartaj Aziz will tell you that how Mr. Manmohan Singh, who was then the finance minister of India, asked him to give him copies of the SROs that were issued by Pakistan. India borrowed those reforms, implemented them, and continued on a stable and continuous path. As a result, by 2000, India overtook us. So the fundamental reason why our economy could not go on the path of transformation, or our economy could not move as fast as other countries' economies moved, was primarily for the reason that we did not allow political stability here and did not ensure continuity of policies. There are three distinct things. One is project, other is a program, the third is a policy. Projects are done in 3 to 5 year time frame. Programs are implemented in 5 to 7 year time frame. but policies require 10 to 15 years continuous path of implementation before they can give you results. But if every 2 years, 5 years, you continue to reverse policies, you continue to have instability, then no policy will work, even if you put best of the best minds in the world to task. So therefore, I think we have to diagnose our problem correctly. A country enjoying political stability with focus on innovation and stability will be a prosperous country. And if you need examples, look at Malaysia, Singapore, China, India, Turkey, and the list is long. Our government recognizes the fact that innovation has driven global economic growth since 2000, and 90% per capita income growth stems from innovation, as use of knowledge is 5 times more important than the amount of capital. Now, economics does not view as how societies allocate scarce resources, but as how societies create new forms of production, products, and business models that comes through innovation. As a result, under Pakistan Vision 2025, knowledge-based economy was recognized as a key pillar, and we made major allocations for Higher Education Commission to build centers of excellence for artificial intelligence, robotics, cyber security, automation, big data, cloud computing, to take Pakistan on the path of fourth industrial revolution. Unfortunately, the experiment of 2018 left the country wandering on a path where innovation and technology was not a priority, and even derailed the ambitious projects underway in pipeline like CPAC. So the priority was how to throw us, who were all part of government, into jails. And you have seen, who should I today question that why did I have to spend more than 2 months in a prison cell where death prisoners are put before they are hanged? What was my fault? Just that we were able to complete a sports complex project, which we inherited as unfinished project, and a bogus reference was framed against me. I was put in jail, a character assassination was done, and a leader of a party publicly in Jalsas calls me by name as Chor and Daku. And the reality of that Chor and Daku is that Islamabad High Court threw that reference in a trash bin, and there was not even an iota of any truth in that case. So this is all we indulged in. We created a polarization in this society. We created hate in this society instead of working on path of collaboration and path of inclusive governance. No country, no society can move without positive synergy. You all work in companies. And if your companies start fighting amongst different departments, marketing is at loggerheads with the production, and production is at loggerheads with the finance, and finance is at loggerheads with the administration, what is the future of that country, that company? A company that is not aligned, a company that does not have positive synergy can never become a successful company. A company which is only cannibalizing its internal resources by fighting each other is doomed to be a failed company. There is no rocket science that will make you understand that, what happens to a company where there is conflict, internal conflict. So the same rule applies to countries or societies. Countries and societies which have internal conflicts, they can never move forward. Only those societies and countries that can learn the art of collaboration. In one of my business policy classes, a professor once said that, what is the sign of a mature market? In a mature market, the players can play the game of competition and collaboration simultaneously. When it comes to their market share, they engage into a fierce competition. But when it comes to industry share, they collaborate. You know, Halib, Allpers, Milk Pack will be engaging in a cutthroat competition as to who will sell more liters of milk in the market. But when it comes to Gawala, they will pool their resources and run joint marketing promotional campaigns how packaged milk is better than Gawala's milk. So this is how societies also have to know that we must learn to work together despite our differences. We don't have to be same in order to be equal. In order to be equal Pakistanis, we don't have to believe in some one ideology, or we don't have to be just alike. We can be different in our ideas, we can be different in our preferences, and yet we can be equal Pakistanis. But if we fail to recognize this simple fact, and we divide our nation, we divide our society based on hate, then I'm sorry, no matter what good talk you do here or what nice sermons we give to each other, nothing is going to work, because this is the very basics of success for any collective entity, whether it is a company or a society or a country. In the last tenure, we gave the first digital policy for the country and empowered students with tools of digital age, laptops, more than 1 million. And these young boys and girls have put Pakistan as the fourth biggest e-lancing country because they were enabled, they were empowered, and they had access to a basic tool. And as a result, now we are seeing a new culture in Pakistan amongst our youth, resulting in making Pakistan one of the top e-lancing countries, and led to digital exports earning major foreign exchange for the country. I will emphasize again that only if Pakistan enjoyed stability and continuity, today it would have been a major player in digital and technology exports. The cost of political instability is often not realized. In 2013, the government in place was using economic policy as a tool for creating an institutional environment that supports technological change within an environment of competitive markets. Largely, Pakistan has relied on traditional model of economic growth through addition of land, labor, and capital, and have failed to replace them with knowledge, technology, entrepreneurship, and innovation. Pakistan kept its reliance on factor increments or endowments and produced some episodes of higher growth through borrowed money. In Pakistan, economic growth expanded on the back of higher domestic demand financed by borrowed money, and domestic capacity was unable to cater this demand. Result was more imports, and as a result, balance of payment crisis after every 4 to 5 years of higher growth. Today, the fundamental challenge for our economy is how quickly we transform ourselves to cross $100 billion export mark. Will it take 4 years or will it take 10 years? That will decide our future. Because as I said, if you look at our history, every time we have tried to grow faster, we increased our demand to consume dollars, but we failed to produce a capacity to earn dollars through exports. We have largely relied on import substitution policy for industrialization in this country. As a result, we have no exportable surplus. For many years, we have been requesting Chinese to import more from Pakistan. Each time China readies itself to import more from Pakistan, we are left with nothing to offer except more rice. वो कहते हैं हम आपके चावल खा खा के थक गए, खुदा के लिए कुछ और भी products दें हमें. We don't have any exportable surplus. Today, China imports $2.25 trillion worth of goods from all over the world. $2.25 खरब चीन पूरी दुनिया से इंपोर्ट करता है. हमारा उसमें क्या हिस्सा है? सिर्फ $3 अरब. वो प्रोडक्ट्स और सर्विसेज के जिसमें हमारी कंपैटिटिव एडवांटेज है, उसमें भी हम किसी एक शोबे में फुल पोटेंशियल के ऊपर चाइना को एक्सपोर्ट नहीं कर पा रहे, क्योंकि हमारी तवज्जो नहीं है. एक्सपोर्ट इज नॉट आवर प्रायोरिटी. सो नाउ, as a result of the turnaround Pakistan conference we did, we have little time left, but we are trying to redirect and reorient our private sector to look at the opportunities in China. एक इतना बड़ा समुंदर है आपके सामने, दुनिया कहां कहां से उड़ के इंडिया में इन्वेस्टमेंट करने आ रही है कि जी इंडिया इतनी बड़ी मार्केट है, और हमारा एक इतना बड़ा दोस्त मुल्क है जो हमें मदद करने के लिए तैयार है, और हम उसकी मार्केट के अंदर एंट्री करने के लिए खुद को तैयार नहीं कर पा रहे. सो आई थिंक दैट इज वेयर आवर फ्यूचर लाइज, दैट हाउ फास्ट डू वी रेडी आवरसेल्फ टू बिकम एन एक्सपोर्ट लेड ग्रोथ model of development and can take advantage right next door in China with more than $2.25 trillion of imports. The productivity remained a problem for Pakistan's industrial sector, and as industrial value added per worker in US dollar of constant 2010 has remained almost stagnant when it grew by a multiple of only 1.2 during 91 to 2017, whereas it was more than doubled in all South Asian countries. So, सारी South Asian countries जो हैं वो double कर रही हैं productivity growth में. And let me just give you one example in agriculture. We are among the top 10 producers of almost every crop in the world. Wheat, cotton, sugarcane, rice, name it, every crop, mangoes, oranges, take any major crop that we produce, either fruits or vegetable or whatever. But our yield, our productivity in each case is at least 30 to 40% lower than the world average production yield. So if only we were to increase our productivity to the global average, there is 12 to 15 billion dollars worth of gain to be made. That does not require much of an investment. For example, in wheat alone, just by improving on-farm management practices, we can have 80 to 200% increase in the yield. So these are the areas where I think we have to focus, and we have to really get the dividends for future, and that is where the growth will come for us, because we are very much investment constrained. We don't have added resources to invest, but with limited investment, with limited resource base, it is only productivity gain that will give us new growth. So therefore, I think this topic of technology, introduction of technology and sustainability and transformation is very vital that you have kept. And I would not like to really bore you by reading more from the draft that I have. I would only say in the end that, we stand at a very critical juncture. I was a young man of 38 years when I first joined government in 1997. Pakistan was celebrating 50th anniversary in 1997. And at that time, Prime Minister asked me, what would you like to do? And I said to him that because I am not a traditional politician, I have some education, I would like to do something professional for my country. And I wonder that if Malaysia can do it with Mahathir's Vision 2020, why cannot we also have a vision for Pakistan and really chalk out a roadmap with which we can have an accelerated development? Prime Minister said to me, okay, go ahead, go and visit Malaysia, study their Vision 2020, meet their leaders, and come back and do your own plan. We went to Malaysia, we met Dr. Mahathir, we met their ministers with their experts, whoever we met, and asked them that, how have you done it? So they all laughed. They said, what? Shall we tell you how have we done it? You used to be our role model in 60s. So we looked at you to get inspiration. And that's how we have done it. So then we came back, we did this Vision 2010. How can we make Pakistan one of the upper middle income countries by 2010? In 2 years, there's our martial law, and martial law threw Vision 2010 outside the window. And there we were without any plan again. So many years passed by. In 2013, we again came back to government. Again, Prime Minister asked me the same question, what responsibility will you like to take? By then, I had grown enough in politics to know which are the ministries that have taka shaka and that have authority. But again, I told him that I have unfinished business. And I think still that Pakistan, with a vision, with a roadmap, can make an accelerated journey towards development. So I would like to again go back to the drawing board and work on a plan for Pakistan. How can we take Pakistan forward? We came back to drawing board. We had very inclusive consultation. PTI government in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, PPP government in Sindh, nationalist government in Balochistan, PMLN government in Punjab, everyone, all the stakeholders. We had 1,000 plus stakeholder consultation in Islamabad, where representatives of business associations, trade, all sectors of economy came and they deliberated what should our vision look like. And finally, we had Vision 2025. At that time, many Socrates and Bucrates came out on media and said that, look, what kind of a joke they are cracking. Don't they see that we don't have electricity for 16 hours? Don't they know that every day a suicide bomber blows himself and kills dozens of people here? Who in the world is going to ever come to Pakistan to invest a penny with this law and order situation? But you all know that within a couple of years, not only extremism and terrorism was defeated, but we turned CPEC into a reality. And by 2017, every ambassador in the town, from US ambassador to British High Commissioner to Japanese ambassador, would come to me and ask only one question. Excellency, tell us in which special economic zone or in which sector our companies can join CPEC projects. So Pakistan was seen as a magnet for investment, and every country in the world thought that we have found a holy grail, and now we are moving and they need to tag along with us to also be part of that journey. But then also PricewaterhouseCoopers, which would be a more credible name for a community like yours, in 2017 published a ranking of countries which they projected in 2030 to be growing fast, and Pakistan was put on the 20th slot, meaning they were seeing Pakistan as part of G20 by 2030. So that was the momentum we had in 2017-18. No matter what, who may say that what was Pakistan in 2018, but this is how the world looked at Pakistan in 2018. They thought we were poised to be part of G20 by 2030. And as I said, every country in the world was wanting to join us in our CPEC enterprise. But then there was again, vision was thrown out. There was change. I would say, I would not hesitate to say, a forced change. You know, today people talk of a regime change. Actually, regime change took place in 2018. And as a result of that regime change, okay, a new government came, we had our reservations, but we accepted it. We became part of the process. But then there was this polarization in the country, and everything that previous government had done was declared a sin. As a result, we saw worst form of persecution, victimization, and the bureaucracy just dropped their pens. They said, you know, हम फैसला क्यों करें? ₹1 के फाइल के ऊपर कोई दस्तखत करने के लिए तैयार नहीं था. And Pakistan was for 4 years left in hibernation. Only politics, only allegations, only, slander that was happening. And the chief executive of the country was standing at international forums and saying that Pakistan is the most corrupt country. Imagine if CEO of a company will stand up before shareholders or will stand up before international fora and say that my company is the most corrupt country and my company is the most money laundering company in the country or in the world. You think that company has a chance? So where we are today, it's no wonder that, in 2022, when we celebrate our 75th independence anniversary, all that hard work that we had done is lost. And we have inherited a country whose development budget we left in 2018 to be 1,000 billion rupees. And I repeat, in 2018, PSDP was 1,000 billion rupees in the budget. And what I inherited when I came back after 4 years, 550 billion rupees. After 4 years, it should have been at least 2,000 billion. And today we have only 700 billion PSDP. For the first time in the history of this country, Finance Division refused to pay the last installment of development budget for April, May and June. Now, if there was any money in the kitty, would finance refuse to release the last installment of the development budget? This did not even happen when we faced nuclear sanctions, because I was the deputy chairman of Planning Commission then also. We were able to meet our all obligations throughout the year, except that we put about 15 to 20% cut on development expenditure, but less than that, we were able to run our development budget for the full year. But in the last quarter of previous financial year, there was zero allocation for development budget for the first time in 75 years of this country's history. So where is that, khazane bhare hue chhod gaye the? So this is where we are on the 75th anniversary, and that is my point. I represent a journey of a generation which had dreams. On the 50th independence anniversary, I thought we could turn around this country. And today, in 2022, we are standing not better off than 1997, but I think worse off than 1997 in many ways. So 25 years have been lost. Why? Not that we did not try hard enough, because political instability threw all the gains we made into the dustbin. And now when people ask me that, how do you see the next year? I tell them that my worry is not next year. My worry is, just as a very frustrated person of my generation, I'm standing before you, whether the generation of my children in 2047 will also stand a frustrated generation like ours, or will they stand up before history with pride that finally we did it? Now, if they have to do it, we have to fix our structural problems. And there is only one structural problem, that we need to have consensus in this country how to run this country. And there is only one way to run this country. That is to run this country according to the Constitution, because that Constitution represents consensus that was achieved in the aftermath of 1971 tragedy. Otherwise, probably there is so much diversity, no one could have that consensus again. So there is only one way forward. There is only one business model, that is constitutional governance in Pakistan. And as a result of that, we need to pursue path of stability and continuity of policies. And thirdly, we must learn to play the game by art of collaboration. If we will not learn the art of collaboration, we will not succeed. And let me close by my conversation with a Chinese leader back in 2002 or 3, I think. I met him in Beijing. He was senior leader of their NDRC. I asked him that, how will you describe your success? He laughed. He said, I can give you a very long answer. But because you are our brothers, I will be frank and very brief. He said, if you can only produce political stability and social solidarity, your country can become magnet for investments, and you don't need to do anything else. So I think his diagnosis or his prescription back then was very valid, and that is our real challenge, that how can we have stability and how can we have solidarity amongst our ranks, so that we, instead of fighting each other, fight our problems, fight the challenges that we face. And if we can have that positive synergy, Allah has blessed us with so many endowments and so many resources that we can cover the journey which others covered in 10 years, maybe in 5 years, which others covered in 25 years, maybe in 10 years. And I hope and pray that through professional forums like these, we will be able to have this consensus in the country that the path for future does not lie in fighting each other. The path for future lies in finding common ground, in trying to work together, trying to synergize the scarce resources we have, and try to use technology and innovation as a way forward so that we can keep pace with the changes that are happening in our external environment. Pakistan Zindabad.